Hi everybody, I'm Luke Hector from The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, please consider thumbing up the video, subscribing to the channel, maybe check out the Patreon if you can lend a hand, but also mainly just leave a comment on the video. Talk about the game in question, any of Alderax's other games, anything about the video itself or my thoughts on it. Let me know your comments, I want to read them. We'll get on with the video in just a second, but first, a quick word from a sponsor. As a fellow gamer, you'll understand this is unacceptable. The solution? Head down to my new sponsor, Kiender.co.uk. Kiender stocks many of the hot new releases as well as some old hidden gems. Free delivery on orders over £30, further discounts on bulk purchases, and even 5% of your spending refunded back to you as points to be used for further discounts down the line. If you use the referral link in the description below and sign up for a new account, you'll get 5% discount on your first order over £60. So let's make gaps in your collection a thing of the past. Get down to Kiender and start saving today. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the video.
Get on with it.
And thank you to Alderax Games for actually sending me a copy of Tiny Towns to review. I think it's the first review copy I've had from Alderax, so moving up in the world. But yep, definitely keen to try this one out again because, little history lesson, I tried this about 3 or 4 years ago at the UK Games Expo, and it was, it was a proper demo. Played it, 4 players, it might be more actually, and my initial thoughts were,
What the hell was that?
since then I kind of ignored the game and just thought, yeah, whatever, flash in the pan. So since then I've not really looked at it again. But then I learnt that there was a certain way we played it, and there was another way to play the game. And I thought, okay, I'd like to try that other way. But it's taken me a while to actually get round to doing it, and I thought, okay, let's reserve judgment on Tiny Towns until I get to play it again with what is deemed, spoiler alert, to be the proper way to play this game. But a little overview first. Tiny Towns is a stupidly simple game, rule-wise anyway, where you essentially have, well, let me tell you the 2 ways you can play it, right? One way you can play it is that you have a deck of cards, and these cards are shuffled up, and on a turn, top card is flipped and it tells you one of 5 resources on it, in this case brick. Every player then takes a brick cube, there's cubes for all the different resources, and plonks them somewhere on their 4x4 grid board. This will rinse repeat every turn with a new card flipping and a new resource being called out, and players are going to place cubes on their board. So what exactly are they aiming to do? They're aiming to build the patterns that correspond to various building cards that will be in the game. You can have a monument, which is your own personal building, but they'll typically be one of various different types before the game starts. So we got farm and well and factory and chapel and tavern and theatre and cottage. I mean, that's just like the basic game one. But then you have quite a few more in this game. Yeah, there's your monuments. There's all the other buildings. There's like 3 of each different other type. It's a decent amount of variety in there, but we'll get onto that later. But let's say that we take the cottage, for example. It requires an L shape and it needs yellow, blue and red in that format. You can mirror rotate it as much as you like, but you need to try and create that on your board. So okay, let's see, I've got the yellow there, fine. Right, I need a glass, so I'll put that one there, and that red, let's say I've moved it there. Once you have put the pattern down, you essentially take off all the resources relating to that specific pattern, take the building in question and plop it on one of the spaces the cubes took up. And then you just carry on as normal. Keep flipping the card, choosing the different resource, putting the resources on, taking them off when you need another building put down. And you essentially keep going until everybody is stuck. Like they choose not to, or they can't physically put any more cubes on the map or put any buildings down. And as you put the buildings down, you can only have 1 per space and only 1 resource cube per space that you can't move around. You'll quickly find that space gets very tiny, very tight. I mean, it is a tiny town after all. So it's an idea of trying to leave yourself like some escape routes in case the resources come up that you don't want, but also building the buildings you want to build in the corresponding like formation that you want them in order to score the most points. So for example, cottages score you 3 points each, but they need to be fed. So at some point you need to build a farm. The tavern scores you more points the more taverns you build. The chapel scores you a point for each fed cottage. The well wants adjacent cottages, and the theatre wants you to have unique buildings on the same row and colour. They've all got various different conditions to meet in order to score points. And of course, once you get to the end, the most points is the winner.
Of course!
So first things first, while this game is simple rules-wise, I mean, this rulebook is oversized, frankly, for what it needs to be, but yeah, there's not a lot of rules in this game. I mean, the 2 back pages are literally just explaining every single building in the game, but you have, I kid you not, right, there's your setup diagram, huge, really nice setup diagram, publishers take note. 2 pages to explain pretty much every single rule in the game, including the FAQ additional rules bit, and a scoring example, and one page for the alternative variant, a little solo variant, which is okay. It's not, but you wouldn't play this one for solo mode. It's basically just a beat your high score thing, and and building clarifications. That's it. This rulebook is super simple to learn. I guarantee you can be up and running in 5 minutes with this thing. It really is gateway level rule set. Now, how to do well in this game is another question though. It is tricky, more tricky than it gives you credit for, because you constantly are in the space where you regret every decision you made.
How could I have been so careless?
Because you'll think, oh, this is good. Yeah, I'm going to put the resources there, there, and there. This will go according to plan. Wait a minute, I don't need a wood. I'll put that over there then. All right. Oh, I don't need a stone either. I'll put that there. Right, I've got my glass right now. Let's build this building. Ah, now I can't fit that building. Now what am I going to do with those two resources there? They don't match a building. Ah, I've ruined everything. That happens a lot. And that's a good thing. I mean, this one definitely requires you to forward plan how you're going to build, but then there is that somewhat chaos factor of the resources coming up at a time you don't want that you need to kind of budget for or like allow for. So everybody around the table is having a bad time in the sense of everything like sort of falling to pot every now and again. And I say bad time, I'm talking about their decisions, not enjoying the game. Enjoyment is pretty good actually. It's a solid game, but here's my little elephant in the room before. This variant that I mentioned, I showed you a method which basically had you flipping a card and using the resources like that. This was the method I was taught as a demo at the UK Games Expo 3 to 4 years ago. I recommend you take this deck of cards and burn it.
Wow, that was pretty brutal even by my standards.
No backsies.
I'm not joking. Burn this little deck of cards because I will never use this deck of cards ever again. This creates a very meh experience. What you want is this little thing, the Master Builder token, because the proper way to play this game, this is the variant, this is the actual way you're supposed to play it, is where on your turn, whoever has this, and it keeps going round, you pass it around like a first player token in a sense, dictates the resource to be used. And that opens up so much more depth for this game, because you can get this hammer and go, right, well I need a wood, so I probably should go for wood, but wait a minute, you need wood as well, and so do you. So chances are you're going to pick wood at some point. So maybe I should pick something else I need. Well, I also need stone. You don't like stone. You've got way too much stone on your thing as it is. You're not a massive fan of stone either. So you know what? I say, haha, stone.
Oh, come on!
Then you pass the token and hopefully they'll say the wood that you need, but they might go for glass. And it's like, oh, where am I going to put glass now? But that idea that you can look at the other players and kind of gauge what resource they're likely to take is such an improvement for this game. If you use the cards, then every resource will appear 3 times each before this deck runs out. But you don't know whether something's going to appear a lot more often than not with this Master Builder rule. Now, the game can go up to 6 players. Yes, you can play this with 6 players, and yes, it is simultaneous. The problem with the Master Builder rule in that, though, is it's easy to look at 2 to 3 other, like tiles to see, oh yeah, you probably don't like these resources. Trying to look at 5 other tiles is a little bit more tricky. So 5 to 6 players is doable, but it does make it a bit of a chaotic game. So honestly, I recommend capping this at 4, honestly, but it's not like the game is bad at 5 or 6, it's just going to be a bit more on the chaotic side. Component-wise, very good. I mean, the artwork on these cards is really nice, really colourful, really evocative. The cubes are big. Yes, I know it's cubes, but you got to keep the cost down. If they had custom resources for all 5 of these, it'd be ridiculous. And you've got different building sculpts for all the types of buildings. This is just 3 of them here. There's another 3 in the backs, and the monuments. I haven't even got those out, and each one has its own unique wooden miniature. There's a lot of wooden pieces in this box, which is why it's this big, frankly, because you might think, well, why do I need a box that big for this? It's mainly just to hold all these other pieces, and the insert does it fine with the assistance of a few baggies. It does look a little bit weird on your board, though, when you're putting resources down on like little cubes on little squares, and then you take them off, and you plonk this tiny little thing down in the middle of a square. You've got a lot of dead space on your board, even when you're putting all of these buildings down, so it kind of looks like a weird little town, really, when you're said and done, but that's a really minor blemish. I mean, that's just a personal me thing. I don't think it's going to bother other people. But yeah, with that Master Builder rule, it's so much better. The cards they just pale in comparison. And this is what made me go meh on the game when I first played it, because I thought it was just a random luck fest that I got no control over what's happening. I can only predict maybe a card will come out, and it's like, well, when's it going to come out? But this is the variant, apparently. Like the super simple variant if you're teaching it to kids. But yeah, I mean, with this, you've got more control, you've got more reason to care about the other players around the table, even though technically I can't influence your map. I can certainly make life a bit harder for you. And of course, it's a giant hammer. So who isn't picking this thing up and going,
Lord help me, what?
bashing it around like some child? Well, no, I am. I don't know about you. But yeah, it's a solid, solid game overall. And you've even got the world's biggest score pad for actually writing down the individual scores. And this is a low scoring game, so every little bit helps. And you lose points for empty spaces, so again, you gotta be pretty efficient, which is tough when people are dictating the resources you put on your board. It's definitely an interesting game. Now, you've got a decent amount of variety with these cards because you've got all these different monuments that you can build, and you only have one per player, and they can influence your strategies a little bit more, like, Obelisk of the Crescent. If I make that, you may place all future buildings on any empty square in your town. Okay, so I don't have to care where the resources are when I place a building. Do I build this early? Do I build it later? Do I just skip it? Because not all of them give you points. This doesn't give you any points, it just gives you a special ability. But then, for example, Mandra's Palace. 2 points for each unique adjacent building type. So it's a bit like the theatre. I had one the other day. What was it called? Let's have a look. It was Fort Ironweed. And Fort Ironweed gives me 7 points, which sounds amazing. And that is pretty amazing for a building. But unless I'm the last player in the game, I can no longer take turns as the master builder. That hurt, because I was forced to build it a little bit sooner than I wanted to, and it meant that between 3 of us at the time, because one person was already out, I never got to use the master builder again. That hurt my ability to do well in the rest of the game. I think I was only one. Oh no, I did win the game in the end. It's actually the score sheet I've got here. Yeah, I won it by tiebreaker just, but still, that really hurt not being able to use the master builder pawn. But there's a lot of cool ones that were in here. I quite like what my friend had, which was the Grand Mausoleum of the Rodina. Your unfed cottages are worth 3 points each. So you don't have to build a farm. So you can just build cottages wherever. And it means you won't build certain buildings that want fed cottages. So that's going to change your strategy a little bit. And as I say, these monuments are pretty cool. You can take them out of the game. They are a variant module at the end of the day. But honestly, I would just throw these in because you can actually ignore your monument and still do well. Particularly if it doesn't get you any points. You may decide, you know what, it's too much hassle. I'm not going to build it. Fine. It's your choice. But I like the fact that you've got a lot of these different buildings. I mean, you've got I mentioned 3, it's technically more if you include the intro set. So yeah, you're talking 4 buildings for each type. So instead of, say, let's take the colour, the tavern, which are green. Okay, well, let's have a look at the greens. For those, I could have a tavern, I could have an almshouse, I could have an inn, I could have a feast hall. I mean, they're all based around the same kind of thing, but they've got slightly different, like, colour patterns for them. It's the same shape, but it's different colours. But then it gives you completely different scoring conditions based on what it is you build. I mean, the almshouse in particular is weird, because the tavern gives you more points for more taverns. This one gives you positive or negative points depending on how many you've built. It goes -1, 5, -3, 15, -5, 26. It's a weird one, to say the least. But again, it's, these create some good variety, and you can just mix and match the different types as long as you have one of each. So overall, Tiny Towns has, it's impressed me actually, because I feel kind of bad that I didn't give this one enough of a chance 3 to 4 years ago when it was like the hotness.
We're sorry.
Now, I never really see anybody play this game, but it is still sold by Alderac and I still see it on shelves, and of course I like to try out more of these gateway level games and see if they're any good. I think that when you use the cards, you are going to probably find this a bit of a meh experience, but I think it was uplifted greatly by the use of the hammer. Now, the game does quote 45 minutes, that is kind of semi-accurate. This is not a filler by any means, because I think the time it takes for people to consider what they're doing, an AP person could slow this game down, particularly if there's 6 of you, and the fact that it does take a while to actually fill up your board, does mean that this is outside the realm of filler territory, but yeah, it's still a pretty decent romp all around, and I can recommend it as a good gateway game. Is it one that I'm going to play crazy often? Well, possibly. I mean, it is actually it's a simple game. The components are cool. I can get used to the fact that I'm using cubes, and the fact that I can teach the game in literally about 2 minutes is definitely a big plus point, particularly when the rulebook is really easy to read and reference. It's got decent components, it's got a decent feel, and it's got, with the Master Builder, a decent amount of depth and a reasonable amount of variety. Do I care about getting the expansions? Not particularly. I mean, I've looked at the Dice Tower reviews for those expansions, and one of them I just don't think looks any good at all, the Villagers I think it is, and the other one, Fortune, maybe I'll get it, I don't know, but really I'd only be getting the expansions to get more buildings. I'm not really interested in the other mechanics that they throw in, because I like the fact that this is simple. So you're getting a decent enough package with just this one, even if it is a bigger box than you would probably expect for a game called Tiny Towns. But yeah, overall, I'm giving this one a decent 8 out of 10. It's a seal of endorsement, not quite excellence level, but I definitely think I was too harsh on it before when I first played it. I think, like I say, a rule variant can change a lot about a game. Takenoko is a good example of that. And so I think I recommend this as a good gateway game. It's one that I'm going to hang on to, actually. I'm going to bring it out every now and again. Be interesting to see if my family could get used to it. Although, I don't know, spatial awareness is not my mum's forte, so I reckon she would struggle with this one. But other than that, I can recommend this game, and I definitely think you should give it a try. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please remember to thumb up the video, like the video, consider subscribing to the channel, check out the Patreon if you can to help me out with other review copies, but also just leave a comment. What are your thoughts on Tiny Towns? Are those 2 expansions worth getting? Do you like this variant, or do you prefer the cards? Am I completely wrong about this and you have a different opinion? By all means, get it in the comments and let us all know. Until next time, you can check out more content on the channel, including the recent review I did for the new Acropolis game that came out at the UK Games Expo, but you can also check out my recent retrospective top 10 where I look at the 2021 year and consider whether it's an improvement from what I thought of it before. Take care, and remember, as always, regardless of how crummy your little town looks at the end of the day, it's still only a game. Bye for now.